Erase the credit card records. Marco Rubio, skipping major votes all over the place on immigration. Bad judgment. He's just not ready to be president.
That was paid for by Right to Rise, the Jeb Bush super PAC. That's a new ad out today. The Lid, time for The Lid. Roundtable is here. Matthew Continetti, editor of the Washington Free Beacon. Clarence Page, columnist for the Chicago Tribune, and the Atlantic's Molly Ball. Matthew, let me start with you. Trump and Cruz are the front runners by a lot. Right to Rise has spent a lot of money, mostly on one person who's not named Trump or Cruz, but Marco Rubio, and they're still doing it.
Rubio trying to fundraise today with an email saying that he's been the subject of about $20 million in attack ads.
He's right, by the way.
He's right.
Yeah.
Look, the interesting thing is, going back to your Kasich interview, you have this lane that's all trying to place second in New Hampshire. And so that's why you have this internecine warfare between the Rubio and Bush people. If they can just get into second, then they think that they have a path to the nomination. However, if Kasich plays spoiler, here's the thing. I don't think either Rubio or Bush gets out, which means this circular firing squad on the establishment side of the GOP continues at least through Super Tuesday.
Molly, isn't he right? I think the same thing. I think that's where we're headed here, and nobody gets out after New Hampshire.
I've just been talking to some Jeb donors about this today, actually, and their feeling is that the Trump people and the Cruz people are not gettable, so why go after them? The problem is, if you look at a national poll, the Trump people and the Cruz people are 60%
There's a reason
of the
to go after
Republican vote.
what you just said. That's why you go after them. Why do you rob banks?
That's
where the money is.
The outsiders are also engaged in a suicide pact at this point, right? Trump and Cruz are going after each other. They are probably more credible against each other with a particular segment of the vote than Jeb or Rubio would be.
Siri aside there.
Sorry
it's okay. Siri is the answer. Why doesn't Bush go after Trump and Cruz? I think we know.
You can tell us old folks can't handle the iPhone.
But, you know, the Willie Sutton line. Why go after them? They're not gettable. Okay, then you're not getting the nomination. End of story, period.
That's right.
If you don't think they're gettable.
Yeah, and I think this contest does go on past New Hampshire if that happens. But it depends on how they play it, though. I always remember Bill Clinton up there declaring himself the comeback kid, gave the impression of victory. A lot of people still think he won it years later, but he did not. So a lot of this can become a spin game after the votes are cast.
It is. I just wonder, Matthew, and I've noticed there is resentment building in both Bush and Rubio camps about the other, and how much of this is. Some of it's bitterness. It's starting to come in.
Jonathan Martin wrote about this in the New York Times today, big Stephen Hayes article in the Weekly Standard, too, saying that the Rubio people blame Bush for Trump. And so you're going to have all of these recriminations taking place. If Trump does do his scenario where he wins Iowa and then New Hampshire, the establishment's going to be left with nothing but recriminations and playing the blame game. You know, it is interesting. Let's shift a little bit to Ted Cruz here, Molly. I thought it was fascinating that he's suddenly making I might be the only person that can stop Trump. That is, he wanted to be an affirmative guy, and he's now saying, well, that's a tough case to make at the end. It means you're losing a little bit of momentum.
I think he does know he's losing a little bit of momentum, and I was on the trail with him last week in New Hampshire, and that was clear. But at the same time, that is an argument that plays very well to all of the people who read that National Review cover story, right? There is a large contingent of sort of conservative policy intellectuals. I think there's a National Review subscriber base in the state of Iowa. Okay. I think there are a lot of people who are looking for a true conservative. There are two Republicans. Right? There's a Republican base that really believes in ideological conservatism. That's the Republican base of sort of National Review and the Heritage Foundation. And then there's a Republican base that's much more about sort of attitude and resentment and whatever else, and that's the one that Trump owns. So Cruz is trying to get the other one.
Well, and apparently there's no room for the establishment.
But the interesting development here, the establishment has shown itself to be remarkably hollow, and yet there are a lot of individual establishment Republicans out there. In other words, true conservatives who don't want to shake everything up like the Trump folks do, and that's the big segment of the GOP that we haven't really seen assert themselves much lately. Jeb Bush was depending on them, and they haven't come through for him.
Well, we'll see. I can tell you this: in the Quinnipiac poll, they had a very large moderate contingent. If it's that high, Trump wins. But if it's back to normal, Cruz wins. That's another way to look at that poll. Anyway, thank you all.